Welcome to my channel, The Medusa Effects, where you can hear the crimes that petrify the society. Maple Hollow wasn't the kind of place where people disappeared. The town sat between whispering pines and frostbitten hills, its streets lit by old iron lamps that glowed the same dull amber they'd cast for decades. Everyone knew the mailman by name. Everyone waved when passing the sheriff. And every single soul, trusted Nurse Claire Donovan. To strangers, she was the soft voice in the emergency room, the steady hands wrapping bandages, the tired smile pushing through double shifts. To Maple Hollow, she was the kind of woman you called when your grandmother fell or when your kid had a fever. She volunteered at church clinics, bought groceries for the old and lonely, and never complained about the long nights. But on July 14, 2019, the woman who cared for everyone else walked out of the hospital for the last time, and no one knew they'd already seen her final smile. Rain clung to the pavement like a second skin as Claire pushed open the back doors of Maple Hollow General. The cameras outside caught her every step. White sneakers, dark scrubs, hair tied back in a messy knot. A hospital badge swung lazily at her hip. She paused just before the lot, tugging her phone from her pocket. Her sister, Nora Donovan, would later confirm the final text at 8:47 p.m. Finally done. Can't wait to crash. Talk tomorrow. There would be no tomorrow. Security footage showed her walking toward her silver Subaru Outback, keys in one hand, exhaustion in every stride. She opened the door slowly, as if even that movement cost her the last of her energy. She never looked over her shoulder. Maple Hollow was safe until it wasn't. By 10 a.m. the next morning, the unease had started to spread. When Claire didn't show up for her morning shift, people assumed exhaustion had caught up with her. By 11 a.m., they started to worry. By noon, co-workers had called her phone 7 times. Every call went straight to voicemail. Sheriff Avery Mallory, a man who hadn't logged a violent crime in years, ordered deputies to begin a search of the roads and tree lines. Locals volunteered without being asked. They split into teams, checked ditches, called her name into the forest. No Subaru, no tire tracks, no trace. Maple Hollow's silence became an omen. Then came the first crack in the illusion. A deputy reviewing surveillance feeds spotted something strange. Claire's Subaru at a gas station 20 miles east, timestamped 2 hours after she left the hospital. But Claire wasn't alone. The footage showed the car idling near the pumps. Then, at 10:15 p.m., a figure in a dark hoodie opened the passenger door and climbed in. No face visible, no dialogue heard, but the body language was unmistakable. They argued. The figure moved sharply. Claire's silhouette leaned away. Then, after 9 seconds of tension suspended in grainy black and white, the Subaru rolled forward and vanished into the night. That was the moment the town's heartbeat changed. There would be no talk of accidents now. No easy explanations. Someone had been waiting for her, and someone knew exactly where she'd be. The police put out a quiet alert. Not an Amber Alert. Not a statewide manhunt. Just a missing person case with concerning circumstances. Maple Hollow had never needed more than that before. But as the hours bled into the next day, something else emerged. Something that made even her closest friends question if they'd ever really known the woman they trusted with their lives. Detectives obtained her bank records. What they found made no sense. Over the previous 3 weeks, Claire had withdrawn nearly $8,000 in cash. Always in small, careful increments. Never from the same ATM twice. Never at predictable times. Her co-workers had noticed subtle changes too. Claire, dependable, gentle Claire, had started stepping outside for hushed calls during breaks. Her eyes sometimes looked red. Not from fatigue, but from emotion. She brushed it off every time someone asked. "Just mom's health stuff again," she'd said to one nurse. "Insurance headaches," she'd told another. No one pressed. Why would they? The first theory to fall apart was randomness. Maple Hollow wasn't a city where predators hunted in the dark. This wasn't chance. This was deliberate and personal. Authorities dug deeper, retraced her GPS history. What they uncovered was worse than fear. It was betrayal wearing a familiar face. 2 nights prior to her disappearance, the Subaru had been tracked along an isolated forest road in the Green Mountain National Forest, an area known mostly to hunters and loners. The coordinates led to a weather-beaten cabin hidden behind acres of spruce and hemlock. The deed? Registered under a fake name. A ranger guided investigators there at dawn. The cabin sat in silence, roof sagging with moss, a porch swallowed in vines. The windows were dusty but intact. The door wasn't locked. Inside, officers found a folded wool blanket on the floor, 2 half-cleaned wine glasses in the sink, a scattering of pine needles near the door fresh, and on the warped wooden floor, Claire's hospital ID badge, lying face down. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle, but the air still remembered someone. Fingerprints off the wine glass, the table, and the badge came back to one man. Caleb Harris, a married anesthetist who had worked temporary shifts at the hospital earlier that spring. When questioned at his home in Rutland, Vermont, Caleb denied everything. "I haven't seen her in months," he said. "I barely spoke to her even when we worked together." But technology didn't care about lies. Cell tower logs placed his phone in Maple Hollow on the exact night Claire disappeared. He was arrested for questioning. The town exhaled, finally believing the nightmare was solvable. But the nightmare had only just begun. 2 weeks after Claire vanished, with Caleb in custody and half the town praying for a miracle, 2 backpackers cutting through an unofficial trail near the cabin stumbled across something shallow, something wrong. A mound of disturbed soil, a strand of brown hair tangled in the roots nearby, a shape too human to be coincidence. Claire Donovan had not disappeared. She had been buried. The autopsy was quiet, clinical, and brutal. Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the skull. Timeline: the night she vanished. Defensive wounds, yes. Struggle, evident. Then came the second shatter, the twist that jarred the coffin lid open on the truth. DNA collected from beneath Claire's fingernails did not match Caleb Harris. It matched her fiancé, Ethan Brooks, the man who'd been organizing search parties, the man who'd cried on local news cameras, begging for answers, the man who said, "Claire was my whole world." People said the air went cold when Sheriff Mallory knocked on his door. The news didn't break like a headline. It leaked like poison. When Ethan Brooks was brought into the station for follow-up questioning, people assumed it was routine. The fiancé was always on the checklist. But when he didn't walk back out, when his truck stayed parked by the courthouse steps for hours after dark, Maple Hollow felt something shift. By the time the truth reached the local diners and gas pumps, the town didn't know what to believe anymore. The monster they feared wasn't a stranger in the woods. He'd been eating dinner with them, hugging neighbors, handing out flyers printed with Claire's face. But before Ethan spoke, before the confession crashed through the case, detectives had to peel back everything that led to that grave in the forest, and everything Claire had been hiding long before her last breath. Claire Donovan's life looked painfully simple from the outside. Rotating shifts, Sunday calls to her sister, wedding plans with Ethan, nervous laughter when people asked about dates. But her phone records told a different story. In the 6 weeks before she vanished, she exchanged 124 calls and 38 messages with one number, registered to a disposable phone later traced to Caleb Harris, the man who claimed he barely knew her, the man with fingerprints in the hidden cabin, the man who didn't bury her. Investigators pieced it together in fragments like glass glued wrong. A rental car in Caleb's name had entered Maple Hollow 3 times in June. Receipts from a roadside store near the forest cabin showed 2 wine purchases. Gas station footage dated July 9th caught Claire in civilian clothes buying a burner phone. She'd worn sunglasses even though it was evening. Whatever she was hiding, she was careful. Too careful. In the early days of the search, Ethan Brooks seemed shattered, haunted even. He barely slept. He coordinated volunteers, stood beside Nora Donovan at press briefings, spoke like a man hollowed out. But the deputies remembered something odd. On the first day, when police were still considering an accident, Ethan mentioned, maybe she met someone out there, before anyone knew about the cabin or the second location. How did he know there was an out there involved? No one clocked it at the time. Grief gives people strange words. Later, they remembered. Detectives kept Caleb in custody, charging him with obstruction and lying to police, but they didn't stop digging. They pulled every strand they could find. Tire tracks confirmed Claire's Subaru had been at the cabin multiple times. Caleb's prints were everywhere, but so were hers. The cabin's lease was linked to a shell identity Caleb had created the year before. Cell tower data placed his phone near Maple Hollow at 9:54 p.m. the night she vanished. But his phone pinged in Rutland by 12:30 a.m. That timeline left a gap. Fatal one. Someone else was there after Caleb fled. Someone who never called 911. Someone who moved her body. Someone who buried a woman he claimed to love. When Ethan was first questioned, he kept his voice level. Said he'd last seen Claire the morning before her shift. Said she'd seemed tired, quiet, but not upset. Said he'd been home that night, fell asleep watching a baseball rerun. None of that was true. Detectives didn't confront him with the DNA right away. They let him speak. Let him trip over details only the guilty knew. Then they showed the file. The results. DNA from under Claire's fingernails. Skin fragments on her wrist. Scratch marks on Ethan's forearm they'd photographed the week before when he waved off help lifting search supplies. And finally, Nora. She told them something no one else knew. Claire planned to call off the engagement after the wedding date kept getting pushed back. She told Ethan 2 weeks earlier she needed space. He told her they could fix it after the honeymoon. She never intended to have one. The confession didn't explode. It seeped. Detective Harlow slid a photo onto the desk. Claire's Subaru parked in the trees near the cabin. Next to it, footprints. 2 sets going in. 1 set coming out. Then she said 3 words that shattered Ethan's performance. We found her. He didn't ask where. He didn't ask how. He asked, voice cracking, did Caleb tell you? They'd never mentioned Caleb. That was the slip. What followed was not rage. It was a quiet collapse. Ethan stared at his hands. The same hands that had held Claire's face on their engagement night. The same hands that had wrapped her in a blanket when she fell asleep studying floral arrangements. The same hands that had balled into fists the night jealousy replaced reason. Then he spoke. Not to defend himself. Not to blame her. But to confess the moment love rotted into violence. He'd followed her twice before. He suspected she was hiding something. Money missing from their joint account. Late shifts that didn't match her schedule. The way she flinched when he touched her shoulder some nights. On July 14th, he trailed her car from the hospital. Kept his lights off. Knew those back roads better than most. Watched her drive into the woods. He parked down the slope, behind a cluster of pines. He saw the cabin light flick on. He waited 30 agonizing minutes. Then Caleb arrived. 10:15. Hoodie. Backpack. Like he'd done it 100 times. They talked inside. Voices muffled. Silhouettes moving. Claire sitting on the edge of a chair. Caleb pacing. Ethan's mind didn't break in a scream. It froze in a single thought. She lied to me. He never remembered kicking open the door. But he remembered what came next. The shouting. The denial. The swing of his arm before he even knew he'd moved. The lantern by the nightstand was metal. Heavy. Unforgiving. 1 hit. The crack was louder than her scream. When she hit the floor, she was still breathing. He said her name. He said, Claire, get up. As if she'd just tripped. As if a kiss could fix it. Caleb backed into the wall, whispering, Oh God, oh God, oh God. Before bolting out the door. He didn't look back. He wouldn't return. Blood pooled slowly in the grain of the floorboards. Claire tried to speak. Blood in her hair. Tears in her eyes. Then she stopped. And Ethan made the choice that damned him forever. He didn't call 911. He didn't drive to the police. He dug. With his own hands at first. Then a shovel by the shed. The ground was too dry. Roots resisted. The night was black and breathless. By sunrise, she was beneath the forest floor, wrapped in the same blanket that once warmed her shoulders by their fireplace. He drove home with her dirt under his nails, and told no one. Caleb Harris was released on bail pending obstruction charges. He looked more ghost than man walking out of the station. His wife filed for divorce within days. His medical license was suspended. Reporters parked outside his house until he vanished from town. Ethan Brooks was charged with second-degree murder. The prosecution angled for first-degree, but the jury believed it was rage, not planning, that swung the lantern. He received 25 years in prison. But the damage reached further than the sentence. Claire's sister stopped speaking for 3 months. The hospital held candlelight vigils every July. Patients still ask which room she used to work in. Some nurses refused to walk past it alone at night. And Maple Hollow, the town that trusted its own so blindly, learned that danger doesn't always break down the door. Sometimes it shares your pillow. The grave was shallow, but the damage it revealed ran deeper than roots. When they pulled Claire Donovan from the earth, Maple Hollow didn't just uncover a body. They unearthed a truth the town wasn't built to handle. For a while, people tried to pretend it was over once Ethan Brooks was in cuffs. But evil doesn't always end with a conviction. Sometimes it lingers, like breath on a cold mirror, seen only when you're forced to look closely. The courtroom smelled like pine cleaner and old fear. Wooden benches crammed with neighbors, nurses, old men from the hardware store, high school teachers, church volunteers. Half the people in that room had eaten at the same potlucks as Ethan. Some had laughed with him. A few had hugged him after Claire vanished. They watched him shuffle in wearing shackles. He looked thinner, hair uncombed, eyes hollow as an attic window. A man aging in reverse, becoming something less than human with each passing hour. 2 details from the trial etched themselves into the memory of every person present. First, when prosecutors showed the bloody lantern, someone in the back whispered Claire's name like a prayer. Second, when Ethan's attorney asked him if he still loved her, his voice cracked as he whispered, "I don't know what I am without her." He didn't cry for the act. He cried for the loss of the thing he destroyed. The jury took 6 hours to deliver the verdict. Guilty of second-degree murder. 25 years. No parole until year 18. As he was let out, people expected him to fight, scream, or beg. He just looked at Claire's sister, Nora, and mouthed, "I'm sorry." She didn't blink, didn't nod, didn't cry. She just stared at him like he was already dead. Caleb left before the leaves turned that fall. He didn't wait for sentencing on the obstruction charges. His lawyer cut a deal: probation, fines, no jail time. The town didn't celebrate it. They didn't forgive him either. People said he should have called for help. Others whispered he ran because he feared killing Claire himself. No one knew what was true, but they all agreed on one thing. He shared wine with a doomed woman in a secret cabin, and she never made it home again. His house was sold by winter. His name scraped off the mailbox. His family packed in silence and left town before dawn. But sometimes, drivers on the forestry road swear they've seen a man standing at the tree line long after midnight, just watching the cabin, hands buried in his pockets, face unreadable in the dark. Whether it's guilt or grief or hallucination, no one gets close enough to find out. Every July, the hospital steps glow with candles, one for each year since she vanished. The staff place them in a line along the concrete, their flames bending in the wind like bowed heads. Someone always leaves lilies by the emergency entrance. Someone always hangs her badge on the railing. Someone always whispers, "We're sorry." And Nora, she comes only once at dawn. Never stays long. Some say she brings a note and buries it at the base of the maple tree near the parking lot where Claire sent her last text. No one asks her what she writes. No one needs to. Night workers at Maple Hollow General swear by an unspoken rule. Don't look too long at the third-floor corner window after 2 a.m. Because sometimes, when the hall lights are off and the world outside is nothing but fog and memory, you see it. A flicker, just for a moment, like someone moving inside a room that hasn't been used since the day Claire Donovan left it behind. One nurse, fresh out of school, laughed at the rumor, said ghosts were for tourists and bored children. Then, one night on the late shift, she saw it. A silhouette, slim, still, familiar, a soft glow behind it, like a candle held in cupped hands. She blinked. Gone. She handed in her shift change papers the next morning and requested reassignment to the clinic across town. She said hospitals were too loud with the dead. Ethan's mother gave Claire's engagement ring to Nora after the trial. Yellow gold band. Diamonds set low. Modest. The kind that came with promises, not price tags. Nora keeps it in a small carved box by her bedside. Some nights, she opens it and just stares at the ring nestled in velvet. Not because she wants it back. Because she hates that something meant for love became a relic of violence. She once said to Pastor Thorne, "He didn't hate her. That's what makes it worse." The pastor didn't know how to answer. Some sins don't need the devil. Some just need a heartbeat and jealousy. Before Claire died, Maple Hollow had one locksmith. His work came mostly from lost keys, not fear. A year later, he hired 2 apprentices. People installed cameras, deadbolts, motion lights. Dogs were adopted. Porch lights left on. Curtains closed at dusk. It wasn't the murder that scared them most. It was realizing a person could smile with you in the morning and bury you at night. That kind of betrayal doesn't vanish when the sentence is read. It lingers, in glances, in whispers, in the way people pause before trusting again. Kids in Maple Hollow don't play hide and seek near the pines anymore. They talk about the cabin like it's a living thing. They say if you walk far enough into the woods and stay very still, you can hear pounding, soft, frantic, muffled by dirt. They dare each other to go near the old well by the cabin. Most don't make it past the clearing. One boy claimed he saw a woman standing by the tree line at dusk. Hair loose, eyes hollow, wearing hospital scrubs dirted at the knees. No one believed him, until the nurse on the night shift saw the same figure reflected in the glass near the stairwell. She refused to work third shift after that. Years pass, but some wounds refuse to scar over. Ethan Brooks wakes every night at 2:17 a.m. The exact minute, based on the coroner's timeline, that Claire's pulse stopped beneath the lantern glow. He doesn't mark time by calendar anymore, only by guilt. In prison, he doesn't speak to other inmates, doesn't eat in the mess hall, doesn't read the letters his parents send. The chaplain says Ethan kneels more than he sleeps. He asked once if God allows ghosts to visit the condemned. The chaplain said no. Ethan said, "Then why do I hear her?" And no one had an answer. Time doesn't heal in straight lines here. Curls like smoke. Claire Donovan's grave is simple. White stone. Small cross etched into the upper corner. Her name, 2 dates. And beneath it, 5 words carved at Nora's request. She cared for everyone but herself. Visitors still bring candles, rosaries, notes, pine cones, sometimes wine corks, like they're acknowledging the secret life no one saw. Maple Hollow will never be what it was. Some scars don't fade. Some windows don't stay dark. And sometimes, the loudest truths are buried just deep enough to be ignored. But sooner or later, the earth gives them back. And when it does, everyone remembers, the danger isn't always in the shadows. Sometimes it wears a ring. Sometimes it knows your secrets. Sometimes it's the person standing right beside you. This was the vanishing of Nurse Claire Donovan. If you found this story chilling, like, share, comment, and subscribe to The Medusa Effect, where every truth hides a shadow, and every crime has 2 sides. Thanks for watching my channel, The Medusa Effects, where crimes that petrify the society are told.